The mop slipped from Elena Ripley's blistered hands and clattered against the cafe floor, dirty water splashing across the tiles she'd just spent 20 minutes scrubbing. Her breath caught. Not again. Are you kidding me right now? The voice cut through the early morning silence like a blade. Owen Reese stood in the doorway to the kitchen, his dark eyes sharp with exhaustion and something worse, disappointment that had calcified into contempt. Elena's fingers trembled as she bent to retrieve the mop. The chemical smell of cheap detergent burned her nostrils. Her back screamed from 3 hours of work on 2 hours of sleep. The second-hand jeans she'd bought from a thrift store hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight in the 3 weeks since she'd started this impossible experiment. 3 weeks of learning what it meant to be invisible. 3 weeks of discovering that poverty wasn't just about empty bank accounts. It was about empty stomachs and emptier hope. I'm sorry, I'll clean it up, right? You'll clean it up and you'll stay an extra hour. Unpaid. Owen turned away before she could respond, his shoulders rigid beneath the faded black t-shirt that had probably cost him $10. The same amount she used to spend on a single coffee in her old life. The life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. Hey beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Can I just say, this story right here? It absolutely wrecked me when I first heard it, and I knew I had to share it with you. We're talking about secret identities, forbidden attraction, and the kind of twist that'll have you gasping out loud. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments. I love seeing our global family come together. And how are you doing today? Really, I want to know. Quick question, have you subscribed yet? Because if you haven't, you're missing out on stories that'll make you feel everything. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might just change how you see the world. Now, let me tell you about Elena and Owen. Because what happens next? You won't see it coming. Elena gripped the mop tighter, her knuckles white beneath the red, raw skin. She was Elena Ripley. Not Elena Ward, heiress to the Ward International Empire. Not the girl whose face had graced magazine covers since she was 18. Not the billionaire's daughter who'd never touched a mop in her life until 3 weeks ago. Just Elena. Nobody. The thought should have been liberating. Instead, it felt like drowning. You done feeling sorry for yourself? She looked up. Owen had returned, carrying a gray bucket that had seen better years. He set it down with a heavy thunk, water sloshing over the sides. I wasn't. You were. His jaw tightened. Look, I don't have time for employees who can't handle the job. This isn't a charity. You want to work here, you work. You want to cry about it, there's the door. Something hot and unfamiliar flared in Elena's chest. Anger, maybe? Or shame? She couldn't tell anymore. The emotions of this new life all blurred together into one constant ache. I can handle it, she said quietly. Then prove it. Owen gestured at the floor. Start over. And this time, try not to waste supplies we can't afford to replace. He walked away, his footsteps heavy with the weight of a man who carried too much and expected no help from anyone. Elena stared at the bucket of water, at her reflection distorted on its murky surface. 25 years old. Trust fund that could buy this entire block. Princeton education. Fluent in 4 languages. And she couldn't even mop a floor without screwing it up. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, the cheap prepaid one she'd bought to replace her previous life. She pulled it out with pruned fingers. Unknown number, day 21 of 90. Your father is watching. Don't disappoint us, Elena. Prove you're worthy of the Ward name. Her mother's words, even in text form, carried the chill of a woman who'd never had to choose between paying rent and buying food. Who'd never felt the particular humiliation of being yelled at for a mistake that cost 50 cents worth of cleaning solution. Elena deleted the message. Then she plunged the mop back into the bucket and started over. The cafe opened at 6:30. By 6:15, Elena had recleaned the floor, wiped down every table, restocked the napkin dispensers, and positioned herself behind the counter where Owen had shown her how to work the ancient espresso machine that wheezed and groaned like it was taking its last breaths. The machine probably cost less than the handbag she used to carry. She'd sold that handbag, along with everything else from her old life, the day she'd made her decision. Go into the real world, her father had said, his voice devoid of warmth. Live without power. Work without privilege. Survive without your name. 90 days. If you can do that, the company will be yours. If you can't, we'll know you're not strong enough to lead the ward empire. Elena had been angry then. Defiant. Now she was just tired. You're manning the register today. She jumped. Owen had materialized beside her, close enough that she caught the scent of soap and coffee and something underneath, exhaustion that had seeped into his skin. I've only done it twice. Then today makes 3. He moved past her, beginning the opening checklist with mechanical precision. Smile. Be fast. Don't screw up the change. Think you can handle that? The casual cruelty in his voice should have made her hate him. Instead, she found herself noticing the shadows beneath his eyes. The way his hands moved with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to do everything alone. The tightness in his shoulders that spoke of pain he'd stopped acknowledging because he had no choice. Owen Reese wasn't mean. He was drowning. And drowning people lashed out at anyone who came close. I can handle it, Elena said again. This time she almost believed it. The first customer arrived at 6:32. The morning rush followed at 6:45. And that's when Elena Ripley, billionaire heiress, discovered what real pressure actually felt like. Orders flying. Register beeping. Customers impatient. Owen moving behind her like a storm, all sharp commands and sharper glances. Her hands shaking. Coffee spilling. Change counted wrong, once, twice, 3 times. Table 4 is still waiting. I'm trying. Try faster. The cafe was called Crossroads, a name that felt prophetic now. Because Elena stood at her own crossroads, caught between the life she'd left and the life she was failing to build. And in the chaos of steam and shouting and the smell of burned coffee she'd forgotten to watch, Elena made a choice. She stopped trying to be perfect. She just tried to survive the next order. Then the next. Then the next. By 8:30, the rush had slowed. Her feet ached. Her hands were sticky with syrup and milk. She'd definitely screwed up at least 4 orders. But the cafe was still standing. And so was she. Not bad. Elena turned. Owen stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. For someone who moves like she's never worked a day in her life, he continued, you didn't completely tank. It was the closest thing to a compliment she'd received since arriving. It shouldn't have meant anything. But Elena felt something warm bloom in her chest anyway, small and fragile and dangerous. Thank you, she whispered. Owen's eyes met hers for just a second. And in that second, something passed between them. Something neither of them had names for yet. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. His face went pale as he looked at the screen. I have to go. His voice had changed, panic beneath the control. Watch the cafe. I'll be back in an hour. Wait by myself? I don't know. But Owen was already gone, the door chiming behind him, leaving Elena alone in a cafe full of customers and equipment she barely understood. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. But this one wasn't from her mother. A known number, we know where you are, Elena Ward. And soon, everyone else will too. The warmth in her chest turned to ice. Because 90 days suddenly felt like eternity. And her secret, the one thing keeping her tethered to this fragile new life, was about to explode. What do you think happens next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. I love reading your theories. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next in Elena and Owen's story. Elena stared at the message until her vision blurred. We know where you are, Elena Ward. And soon, everyone else will too. Her first instinct was to call her security team, the one she'd dismissed 90 days ago. Her second instinct was to run. Her third was to check the cafe windows for photographers, reporters, anyone with a camera pointed at the girl who wasn't supposed to exist anymore. But a customer cleared his throat at the counter, and reality snapped back into focus. She was alone. Owen was gone. And there were 15 people in this cafe who needed coffee, not drama. Elena shoved the phone into her pocket and forced her face into something resembling a smile. What can I get you? The next 45 minutes tested every ounce of composure Elena had spent 25 years perfecting. She burned espresso, gave someone oat milk instead of almond, dropped a croissant on the floor and nearly served it anyway before catching herself. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, from the threatening text, from exhaustion, from the terrifying realization that she was actually, genuinely alone for the first time in her privileged life. No assistants. No bodyguards. No father to fix her problems with a phone call. Just her, an ancient espresso machine, and a line of increasingly impatient customers. You knew. An older woman with silver hair and kind eyes had been watching her struggle from table 7. Is it that obvious? Elena tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. Honey, you look like a baby deer on roller skates. The woman stood, moving to the counter with the ease of someone who'd made this trip 1,000 times. I'm Dorothy Strachey. I've been coming to Crossroads since Owen's father opened it 15 years ago. The name hit Elena like a punch. Owen's father. Past tense. Let me guess, Dorothy continued, her voice warm with the kind of authority that came from grandmothers everywhere. Owen threw you in the deep end and ran off to check on Patricia? Elena blinked. Patricia? His mother. Dorothy's expression softened. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She's at Mercy General, about 20 minutes from here. Owen visits her every morning before the rush and every evening after close. Sometimes more when she has bad days. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Elena's feet. Owen's mother was dying. And he was here, yelling at her about spilled mop water, because he had no choice. Because keeping this cafe alive was probably the only thing keeping him alive. I didn't know, Elena whispered. He doesn't talk about it. Dorothy glanced at the growing line behind her. How about this? You handle the register, I'll work the machine. I used to fill in for Owen's dad back in the day. Muscle memory. Elena should have said no. Health codes, liability, all the business regulations she'd learned in her corporate strategy classes at Princeton. But desperation made her honest. Please. Dorothy came around the counter, tied on an apron like she'd never left, and together they tackled the morning crowd. And for the first time since this whole experiment began, Elena didn't feel completely alone. Owen returned 53 minutes later. His eyes were red. Elena noticed because she'd spent the last 53 minutes thinking about him in a completely different light. Not as the cruel boss who cut her pay for minor mistakes, but as a son watching his mother die. As a man carrying weight that would have crushed someone weaker. As someone who probably hadn't had a single gentle moment in longer than Elena had been pretending to be poor. Dorothy. Owen's voice cracked on the name. You didn't have to. Hush. Dorothy untied the apron, patted his cheek with weathered hands. Your girl here did fine. Rough around the edges, but she's got heart. I can always tell. She left a $20 bill on the counter for a coffee that cost $4 and walked out before Owen could protest. The cafe had emptied. The lunch crowd wouldn't arrive for another hour. Silence settled between them like fog. How's your mom? Elena asked softly. Owen's jaw tightened. Why do you care? The question wasn't cruel, it was genuine. Confused. Like he'd forgotten that caring was something people did. Because you're human, Elena said. And humans aren't supposed to carry everything alone. Something flickered across Owen's face. Surprise, maybe? Or suspicion. His eyes narrowed as he studied her, really looked at her for the first time since she'd started working here. You talk like someone who's read a lot of books about struggle but never actually lived it. Elena's breath caught. He was right. And he had no idea how right he was. My mom's dying, Owen said flatly, like ripping off a bandage. 6 months, maybe less. The treatments aren't working. The hospital bills are drowning me. This cafe is all I have left of my father, and I'm about 3 months from losing it. So no, I don't have time to be nice. I don't have time to train employees who can't figure out how to mop a floor. I don't have time for anything except survival. He moved past her toward the kitchen, and Elena saw it clearly now, the tremor in his hands. The way he braced himself against the counter like it was the only thing holding him up. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be sorry. Be better. Owen didn't look at her. Because I can't afford to carry anyone else. I'm barely carrying myself. The words should have stung. Instead, they broke something open in Elena's chest. Because she understood, suddenly, why her parents had sent her here. Not to punish her. To teach her what she'd never learned in boardrooms and charity galas. That privilege was invisible until you lost it. That strength looked different on people who had no safety net. That cruelty was sometimes just exhaustion wearing a sharper face. Then let me help carry it, Elena heard herself say. Owen turned slowly. What? You said you can't carry anyone else. Fine. So stop carrying me. She moved toward him, her fear momentarily forgotten in the face of his pain. Teach me. Really teach me. Not just how to mop floors and work the register, but how to actually help you save this place. Why do you even care? Owen's voice was raw now, all the armor stripped away. You're going to quit in 2 weeks like everyone else. Find something easier. Somewhere the boss isn't an asshole. You're not an asshole. Elena held his gaze. You're drowning. There's a difference. For a long moment, Owen just stared at her. And Elena saw something shift in his dark eyes, the smallest crack in the wall he'd built around himself. You really have no idea what you're talking about, he said finally. But his voice had softened, just barely. This cafe is a sinking ship. My father spent 30 years building it, and I'm watching it die the same way I'm watching my mom die. Slowly. Painfully. And there's nothing I can do except show up every day and pretend I still have hope. So stop pretending, Elena said, and start fighting. With what army? Owen laughed bitterly. I've got a dying espresso machine, a lease I can barely afford, and a cleaner who just learned how to hold a mop 3 weeks ago. Elena wanted to tell him the truth in that moment. I'm not really a cleaner. I'm Elena Ward. I could write you a check right now that would solve every problem you have. I could save your cafe, pay your mother's hospital bills, give you back your hope. But the words stuck in her throat. Because if she revealed herself now, she'd never know if he accepted her help because he needed it, or because of who she was. And more terrifyingly, she'd never know if what she was starting to feel for this exhausted, angry, beautiful man was real. Or just another transaction in a life that had always been for sale. Then I guess we both better learn fast, Elena said instead. Owen studied her for another long moment. Then, impossibly, he almost smiled. You're either the dumbest person I've ever met, he said, or the bravest. Can't I be both? This time, Owen definitely smiled. Tired, but real. And Elena felt something dangerous bloom in her chest, something that had nothing to do with her mission or her parents' test or the 90 days she had to survive. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Her phone buzzed again at 2 p.m., during the lunch rush she and Owen tackled side by side. Another message from the unknown number. But Elena didn't look at it. For the first time in 3 weeks, she had something more important to focus on than her secret. She had someone worth protecting it for. What do you think of Owen's story? And Dorothy, don't you just love her? Drop a comment below telling me which character you're connecting with most so far. I read every single one, and your insights honestly make my day. I read, she said, trying to sound casual even as panic clawed at her throat. The zoning notices are public record. Posted at City Hall. It wasn't a bad save. But Barker was looking at her like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Owen, Barker said, still watching Elena, I'd suggest you think carefully about who you're taking business advice from. My offer stands for 48 hours. After that, we move to eviction proceedings. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket with practiced precision, and walked out. The door chimed behind him like a funeral bell. Who the hell are you? Owen's voice cut through the silence the moment Barker's car pulled away from the curb. Elena's hands were shaking. Don't. Owen moved closer, his eyes searching her face like he was seeing her for the first time. Don't tell me you're just a cleaner who happens to know about commercial zoning laws and property development. Don't insult my intelligence. Elena's mind raced. The careful lies she'd prepared for this moment evaporated under the intensity of his gaze. I went to college, she tried. Business classes. Where? And don't say community college because I went to community college, and they don't teach you how to spot predatory real estate tactics in Introduction to Accounting. He was too smart. She'd underestimated him, the same way everyone probably underestimated him because he ran a struggling cafe instead of wearing expensive suits. Princeton, Elena whispered before she could stop herself. Owen's expression shifted, shock, then confusion, then something harder. Princeton. He said it like a foreign word. You went to Princeton University, and you're working as a cleaner in my cafe for $9 an hour. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. His voice had gone cold, all the warmth from earlier evaporated. Because either you're running from something, hiding from something, or lying about something. And I don't have room in my life for any of those options. Elena opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was impossible. I'm a billionaire heiress playing poor person to prove to my father that I deserve my inheritance. Even in her head, it sounded obscene. I needed a fresh start, she said finally. It was the closest to honest she could get. My old life, it wasn't real. I wanted to know what real life looked like. What real work felt like. What it meant to slum it with the peasants? Owen's laugh was bitter. Jesus Christ. You're one of those people. Rich kid with an identity crisis, looking for meaning in poverty tourism. No, that's not. Then what is it, Elena? He said her name like an accusation. Because the girl I thought you were, the one struggling to make rent, learning to survive, that was someone I was starting to actually respect. Maybe even. He stopped himself, jaw clenching. But that person doesn't exist, does she? You're just playing dress up in my disaster. The words hit like physical blows. Because he was right, and he was wrong, and Elena didn't know how to explain the difference. I'm still that person, she said desperately. I'm still learning. I'm still struggling. Struggling. Owen's voice rose. You think you know what struggling means? I'm about to lose everything my father built. My mother is dying, and I can't afford the treatments that might give her 6 more months. I haven't had a full night's sleep in 2 years. That's struggling, Elena. Whatever you're doing, that's just tourism. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. You're right. I don't know what real struggling is. I've had every advantage, every privilege, every safety net. But that's exactly why I'm here. To learn. To understand. To become someone who what? Who gets to feel good about themselves for a few months before running back to their trust fund. Owen shook his head. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for you. He turned toward the kitchen, and Elena felt something fracture in her chest. I can help you, she said. Owen stopped. I can help you save the cafe. I know about business, about marketing, about... I don't want your help. Owen's voice was quiet now, which somehow hurt worse than the yelling. I want you to leave. Owen. Please. He still wouldn't look at her. Just go. Elena stood frozen. This was the moment she should reveal everything. Tell him the truth. Prove that she wasn't just some rich girl playing games. But the words wouldn't come. Because what if the truth made everything worse? What if he hated her more for being a billionaire than for lying about being poor? Elena grabbed her coat and walked out into the autumn afternoon. Her phone buzzed the moment she hit the sidewalk. Unknown number, tick-tock, princess. 37 days left. Wonder if your boyfriend knows who he's really working with? And then, 5 seconds later, another message. This one with a photo. Elena and Owen, taken through the cafe window. Her face clearly visible. His expression caught mid-argument. Unknown number, such a cute couple. Would be a shame if this went viral. Hashtag secret billionaire, hashtag poverty tourist, hashtag fake life. Elena's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Someone was watching her. Someone knew exactly who she was. And in 37 days, they were going to destroy everything. The cafe, her mission, and the fragile connection she'd started building with a man who now couldn't even look at her. She had to fix this. All of it. But as she stood on the street corner, tears finally spilling down her cheeks, Elena Ward realized something terrifying. For the first time in her carefully controlled life, she had absolutely no idea how. Behind her, inside Crossroads Café, Owen braced himself against the counter and tried to remember how to breathe. Because the girl who just walked out wasn't supposed to matter. She was a stranger. An employee. A complication he couldn't afford. But when she'd stood up to Barker, her eyes flashing with intelligence and fire, defending a business that wasn't even hers, Owen had felt something he thought poverty had killed in him. And hope, in his experience, was the most dangerous thing a drowning man could hold on to. Elena didn't go back to Crossroads the next morning. Instead, she sat in the cramped studio apartment she'd rented in a neighborhood her security team would have had heart attacks over, staring at her phone and trying to figure out who wanted to destroy her life. The threatening messages had stopped after the photo. No new texts. No demands. Just silence, the kind that felt like someone holding their breath before screaming. Her laptop, the one expensive thing she'd kept from her old life, sat open on the second-hand coffee table. She'd spent 4 hours researching Hendricks' development group, following digital breadcrumbs through shell companies and acquisition records. What she'd found made her blood run cold. Hendricks wasn't just targeting Crossroads. They'd systematically acquired 17 properties in Owens' neighborhood over the past 8 months. Always the same pattern: lowball offers, manufactured crises, sudden evictions. They were assembling a full city block for a luxury development. And Owens' Café was the last piece they needed. Elena's fingers hovered over her phone. She should call her father's attorneys. They could shut down Hendricks with a single lawsuit. She should call her mother's PR team. They could make the threats disappear with the efficiency that money always brought. She should stop pretending she was just Elena Ripley, broke cleaner, and start being Elena Ward, billionaire with actual power. Instead, she grabbed her coat and headed back to the cafe. Because Owen had asked her to leave. He hadn't fired her. Crossroads was dark when she arrived at 5:47 a.m. Elena's heart sank. Owen always opened at 6. He was never late. Never absent. The cafe was the only constant in his collapsing world. Unless something had happened to his mother. She was pulling out her phone to do what, exactly? She didn't have his number. Didn't have any way to reach him except. The door opened. Owen stood in the threshold, backlit by the kitchen light. He looked like he hadn't slept. His t-shirt was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his eyes carrying the kind of exhaustion that went deeper than physical. "You came back," he said quietly. "You didn't fire me," Elena replied. "I thought about it." He held the door open. "Spent all night thinking about it, actually." Elena stepped inside. The cafe smelled like coffee and cinnamon and the particular loneliness of 6 a.m. in a place designed for crowds. "My mom had a bad night," Owen said, moving behind the counter with mechanical precision. "They called me at midnight. I've been at the hospital since then. Just got back 20 minutes ago." "Owen, I'm so sorry." "She asked about you." Elena froze. Owen pulled 2 mugs from the shelf, started the espresso machine with practiced hands. "I told her I hired a new cleaner. Few days ago, during one of her good moments. She got excited. Said it was good that I wasn't trying to do everything alone anymore." He worked in silence for a moment, steam hissing, coffee dripping. Then last night, when the pain was bad and the morphine wasn't working, she grabbed my hand and said, "Don't push away the girl who wants to help. Your father did that to me for years, and he regretted it every day." Owen set a perfect cappuccino in front of Elena. The foam art, a delicate leaf, would have cost $12 in her old neighborhood. "I don't know who you really are," he said, meeting her eyes. "I don't know why someone with a Princeton education is scrubbing floors in my dying cafe. I don't know if you're running from something or towards something or just lost." He paused, his jaw working. "But I know you stood up to Barker when you had no reason to. I know you stayed when Dorothy needed help. I know you show up every day with blisters on your hands and don't complain." His voice softened. "And I know that when you talk about wanting to help save this place, you mean it. I don't understand why, but I believe you." Elena's throat tightened. "Owen. So here's the deal." He leaned against the counter, and for the first time since she'd met him, his guard was down. "You want to help save Crossroads? Actually help. Not just clean floors and work the register." "Yes," Elena breathed. "Then help me." Use whatever fancy Princeton business knowledge you have. Because in 36 days, I lose everything. And I'm desperate enough to accept help from a beautiful stranger with secrets she won't explain. Beautiful. He'd called her beautiful. Elena's heart did something complicated in her chest. Okay, she managed. But I need complete transparency. Financial records, lease agreements, everything. I can't help if you hide the damage. Owen's smile was painful to watch. Trust me, there's too much damage to hide. He pulled out a battered laptop, and for the next 2 hours, through the pre-opening routine, through the early morning rush, Owen Reese showed Elena Ripley exactly how bad things were. And they were catastrophic. $62,000 in total debt, Elena said at 10 a.m., spreadsheets covering every surface of the back office. 18 in back rent, 24 in medical bills, 14 in equipment loans, 6 in credit cards. And $347 in the bank account, Owen added, his voice hollow. Don't forget that part. Elena studied the numbers with the analytical mind she'd inherited from her father. The cafe made barely enough to cover daily operating costs. Owen had been robbing Peter to pay Paul for months, juggling which bills to pay and which to ignore, surviving on hope and denial. The espresso machine needs replacing, she said. That's why your coffee quality is inconsistent. Customers notice. Customers don't come anyway. Owen gestured at the empty cafe. Why invest in equipment when there's no one to serve? Because quality drives traffic. But you're right, it's a chicken and egg problem. Elena tapped her pen against her lips, thinking, what if we didn't replace it? What if we leaned into the aesthetic? Vintage equipment, artisanal approach, small batch specialty drinks. Make the limitation a feature, not a bug. Owen stared at her. You've been here 3 weeks and you already see what I've been missing for 3 years. I have fresh eyes. And distance from the emotion. Elena met his gaze. You're too close to this, Owen. It's not just a cafe to you, it's your father's legacy. Your family's history. That makes it harder to see clearly. Yeah, well, emotional attachment is all I have left. But his voice carried curiosity now instead of defeat. What else do you see? Elena stood, moving to the window. Morning light filtered through glass that needed cleaning, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny stars. I see a cafe in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood that's still priced for the old demographic. I see a menu that hasn't changed in 15 years. I see a space that's comfortable but not Instagram-worthy, and like it or not, that matters now. She turned back to him. I see potential that's been buried under survival mode. Potential doesn't pay bills. No. But strategy does. Elena grabbed a napkin, started sketching. We need a 3-part approach. Immediate cash injection, midterm rebranding, long-term customer base expansion. Immediate cash injection? Owen laughed bitterly. From where? The money tree I forgot to water? Elena bit her lip. This was the moment. She could write a check right now. Solve everything with 6 figures and a signature. But then she'd never know if he wanted her, or her money. A signature event, she said instead. Something that drives traffic and creates buzz. What if we hosted an open mic night? Local artists, musicians, poets. Charge a cover, sell specialty drinks, create an experience people want to Instagram. Owen was quiet for a long moment. My dad used to do that, he said finally, his voice thick. Every Friday night. He called it crossroads sessions. Said the cafe was where people's paths intersected, and art was what made the intersections meaningful. Why did it stop? When he got sick, I couldn't. I didn't have time to organize it. And after he died, it felt wrong. Like I'd be pretending to be him. Elena moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. You wouldn't be pretending to be him, she said softly. You'd be honoring him. There's a difference. Owen's breath hitched. I wouldn't know where to start. Then let me help you. Elena's hand found his on the counter, her fingers settling over his scarred knuckles. Let me do what I'm actually good at, building something from broken pieces. The air between them shifted. Owen looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face, and Elena saw the exact moment he stopped seeing her as an employee. Why do I feel like letting you in is going to either save me or destroy me? He whispered. Maybe both, Elena admitted. And then Owen smiled, real and warm and devastating. Guess I've always been bad at self-preservation. They spent the next week building something impossible. Elena created social media accounts. Crossroads had never had an online presence. She designed flyers using free software and printed them at the library. She reached out to local artists through community boards, offering them a platform in exchange for promotion. Owen watched her work with a mixture of awe and suspicion, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. You're terrifying when you focus, he said on day 3, watching her negotiate with a local coffee roaster for a better bulk rate. I'm effective, Elena corrected, then softened. Is that a compliment? Honestly? I can't tell if I'm impressed or intimidated. Be both. I am. He laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd heard from him, and something warm bloomed in Elena's chest. They fell into a rhythm. Early mornings prepping together, Owen teaching her the intricacies of coffee craft that she'd never bothered learning in her old life. Midday strategizing sessions over spreadsheets and sketches. Late afternoons working side by side as the light faded and the cafe settled into comfortable silence. And slowly, carefully, the walls between them crumbled. Tell me about Princeton, Owen said on day 8, as they cleaned up after a marginally better lunch rush. Elena's hands stilled on the table she was wiping. What do you want to know? Why you left? Why you're here instead of? I don't know, running a Fortune 500 company or whatever Princeton graduates do. She couldn't tell him the truth. But she could tell him something true. I was drowning there, Elena said quietly. In expectations. In a life that was planned out before I was born. Everyone knew exactly who Elena was supposed to be, and none of them asked who Elena actually was. Owen leaned against the counter, his full attention on her in a way that made her feel simultaneously exposed and safe. So you ran. So I jumped, Elena corrected. There's a difference. Running is cowardly. Jumping is a choice to fall toward something instead of away from something. And what are you falling toward? Elena thought. I'm falling toward you, and it's terrifying. Myself, she said instead. The version of me that exists without the packaging. Without the performance. Owen was quiet for a moment. Then, I think I like her better than the performance version. You've never met the performance version. Exactly. His eyes held hers. And I don't want to. Elena's heart hammered. They were standing too close now, the space between them charged with something neither was ready to name. Owen. Her phone buzzed. Both of them jumped, the moment shattering. Elena pulled it out with shaking hands. A known number, how sweet. Too bad it's all built on lies. Friday night, your little open mic event? That's when the truth comes out. Enjoy these last few days of playing pretend. The blood drained from Elena's face. What's wrong? Owen's hand found her shoulder. Elena, you just went pale. Nothing. She shoved the phone in her pocket. Wrong number. But Owen was too perceptive now, too attuned to her after 8 days of working in close proximity. You're lying, he said flatly. I'm not. You get these messages. I've seen you. Your whole body changes when your phone buzzes. You look terrified. His hand fell away. What aren't you telling me? Elena's mind raced. The open mic was in 3 days. She'd worked so hard to make it perfect, to give Owen hope, to prove she could help. And someone, whoever was threatening her, was going to destroy it all. I can't, she whispered. Can't or won't. Both. Elena grabbed her coat. I'm sorry. I need to go. Elena, wait. But she was already out the door, running from the look of hurt and confusion on Owen's face. Running from the truth that was chasing her. Running from the feelings that were growing too fast and too real. She didn't see the photographer across the street. Didn't see the camera flash. Didn't know that in 72 hours, her two worlds were going to collide with catastrophic force. The open mic is in 3 days. The truth is coming out. And Elena has a choice to make. Comment below, should Elena tell Owen the truth before it all explodes? Or is it too late? I'm reading every response. Friday night arrived with the weight of a storm about to break. Elena had barely slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that message. Friday night, your little open mic event? That's when the truth comes out. She'd considered running, disappearing before whoever was threatening her could make good on their promise. She'd considered confessing everything to Owen, but every time she tried to form the words, they died in her throat. I'm Elena Ward, billionaire heiress. Everything you know about me is a lie. How did you say that to someone who'd started looking at you like you mattered? So instead, she'd thrown herself into making the open mic night perfect. If this was her last night at Crossroads, her last night with Owen, she'd make it count. The cafe had transformed. String lights Elena had bought from a discount store hung across the ceiling like captured stars. Candles flickered on every table. Second-hand votives that cast warm shadows on walls Owen had repainted a deep charcoal gray. The old furniture had been rearranged to create an intimate performance space, and the ancient espresso machine gleamed from the deep cleaning Elena had given it. It looked like magic on a shoestring budget. It looked like hope. I can't believe you pulled this off, Owen said, standing in the doorway at 6 p.m., an hour before doors opened. Elena turned from where she'd been arranging the small stage, just a platform Owen had built from reclaimed wood. He stood backlit by the fading autumn sun, and something about the angle of light and shadow made her heart ache. She'd memorized him over the past 2 weeks. The scar on his left hand from a childhood accident. The way he pushed his hair back when he was stressed. The rare, devastating smile that made her forget every carefully constructed lie she'd built. We pulled it off, Elena corrected. This was your father's dream. I just reminded you it was worth fighting for. Owen moved closer, and Elena saw something in his expression that made breathing difficult. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Elena's pulse spiked. Okay. I've been trying not to. He stopped, jaw working. We have a professional relationship. You work for me. There are boundaries and power dynamics and about 17 reasons this is a terrible idea. Oh, and what? I'm falling for you, Elena. The words came out rough, like they'd been dragged from somewhere deep. I don't know who you really are or what you're running from or why someone with your intelligence is working in my dying cafe for minimum wage. But I know that when you're here, I remember how to hope. And when you leave, I count the hours until you come back. And that terrifies me more than losing this place. Elena felt the world tilt. This was the moment. She had to tell him the truth. The door chimed. Dorothy walked in, followed by a stream of early arrivals. Local artists carrying guitar cases and notebooks. Young couples Elena had seen on Instagram, drawn by the social media campaign she'd crafted. Familiar faces from the morning rush, looking curious and excited. People, actual people, coming to Crossroads with purpose and anticipation. We'll talk after, Owen said, his eyes holding a promise that made Elena's heart break and soar simultaneously. Okay, she whispered. But she knew there wouldn't be an after. Not the way he meant. By 7:30, the cafe was packed. 73 people, Elena counted twice, disbelieving, crammed into a space designed for 40. They sat on the floor, leaned against walls, filled every chair and table. The espresso machine worked overtime, and the special menu Elena had designed sold out in the first hour. Owen moved through the crowd with an expression Elena had never seen on him. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. This is incredible, Dorothy said, squeezing Elena's hand. I haven't seen this place this alive since Patrick was running it. Patrick, Owen's father. I wish he could see this, Elena said. Oh honey, I think he does. Dorothy's eyes were wet. And I think he sent you here to remind Owen that magic is still possible. Guilt twisted in Elena's stomach. I'm not magic. I'm a lie wearing good intentions. The performances started at 8. A spoken-word poet made the crowd snap their fingers in appreciation. A folk singer played guitar that reminded Elena of summer nights she'd never actually experienced. Her summers had been the Hamptons and European tours, curated and controlled. A jazz trio turned the small cafe into something timeless and aching. And through it all, Owen stood behind the counter, watching his father's dream live again. his eyes bright with something that looked dangerously close to tears. Elena pulled out her phone to capture it, this moment of perfect triumph before everything shattered. And that's when she saw them. 3 new messages. Unknown number, enjoy the show, princess. Unknown number, everyone's watching tonight. Everyone. Unknown number, 10 minutes. Elena's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. 10 minutes. She had 10 minutes before what? Before her identity was exposed? Before everything she'd built with Owen crumbled? She pushed through the crowd, desperate to find Owen, to pull him aside, to confess before someone else did it for her. But the crowd was too thick, and Owen was introducing the next performer, and the door opened. Matthew Barker walked in. But he wasn't alone. He was followed by a woman in a designer suit that probably cost more than Owen's monthly revenue. She carried a tablet and the particular energy of someone about to ruin lives with efficiency. And behind them, Elena's heart stopped. A photographer. Professional camera. The kind used by tabloid journalists who'd been chasing Elena Ward her entire life. Ladies and gentlemen, Barker's voice cut through the music, amplified somehow, commanding attention. I apologize for the interruption, but I think you all deserve to know who's really behind tonight's event. The cafe went silent. Owen stepped forward, his expression darkening. Barker, get out of my cafe. Oh, I will. But first, Barker gestured to the woman with the tablet. I think everyone here should meet your mysterious helper. The one who's been orchestrating this whole performance. The woman tapped her screen, and suddenly, Elena's face appeared on the tablet. But not as she looked now, in second-hand jeans and a simple black shirt. Elena Ward. In a ball gown. At the Metropolitan Museum Gala. Standing next to her father, Charles Ward, CEO of Ward International. Caption: Billionaire heiress Elena Ward, 25, net worth $2.3 billion, heir to Ward International empire. The crowd murmured. Owen's face drained of color. That's right, Barker continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Your little cleaner? She's Elena Ward, daughter of one of the richest men in America. Playing poor in your cafe like it's some kind of social experiment. The room erupted. Phones appeared, cameras flashing. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed, cruel and disbelieving. But Elena only saw Owen. Saw the moment comprehension hit him. Saw betrayal replace joy in his eyes. Saw every fragile piece of trust they'd built shatter like glass. Owen, Elena pushed through the crowd, desperate to reach him. Don't. His voice was barely audible, but it stopped her like a physical wall. Don't come near me. Please, let me explain. Explain what? Owen's voice rose, and the crowd quieted to hear. Explain that you've been lying to me from the moment you walked through that door? That while I was panicking about $18,000 in debt, you could have paid it with the change in your pocket? That every moment, every conversation, His voice cracked. It was all just research for you? Poverty tourism? No, that's not. Ms. Ward, the woman with the tablet stepped forward. I'm Jennifer Kincaid with the New York Times. Is it true you've been working here as part of a reality show deal? Our sources say you're filming a documentary about. There's no documentary. Elena's voice broke. I'm not filming anything. Then why? Owen demanded. Why pretend to be someone you're not? Why work in my cafe, scrubbing floors and lying to my face? The crowd pressed closer, phones recording every second of Elena's humiliation. Because my parents gave me an ultimatum, Elena said, tears streaming down her face now. 90 days living in the real world, working a real job, surviving without my name or my money. If I could do it, I'd inherit the company. If I couldn't, she swallowed hard. I had to prove I wasn't just a spoiled rich girl. And you thought you'd prove it by lying to a man who's losing everything? Owen's laugh was broken. Did it feel good? Watching me beg you to stay? Watching me struggle with problems you could solve with a phone call? I wanted to help you. You wanted to feel useful. Owen's hands shook. You wanted to play hero in my tragedy so you could go back to your mansion and tell your rich friends how you helped the poor, struggling cafe owner. Well, congratulations, Elena. You win. You got your little adventure. Your character development. Your story about how you survived in the real world for, what, 2 whole weeks. 3, Elena whispered. 3 weeks. And I didn't want to leave. Of course you didn't. The show wasn't over yet. Owen turned to Barker. I assume this is why you're here? To capitalize on the drama? Barker smiled. Actually, I'm here to present a revised offer. Given Ms. Ward's involvement, I thought perhaps she'd be interested in purchasing the property herself. Unless, he looked at Elena with calculated cruelty, you've already gotten what you came for? The accusation in his voice was clear. Elena felt something break inside her. I came here to learn what real life looked like, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. And I learned that real life is hard and beautiful and painful. I learned what it means to work for something instead of inheriting it. I learned what it feels like to be invisible, to be small, to struggle. She looked directly at Owen, her heart in her throat. And I learned what it feels like to fall in love with someone who sees you, really sees you, for the first time in your life. Even if he was seeing a lie. The cafe went silent. Owen's expression cracked, just for a second. Then hardened again. Get out, he said quietly. Owen, please. Get out. His voice shattered. Get out of my cafe, get out of my life, and go back to whatever gilded cage you came from. I don't want your help. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you except for you to leave. Elena stood frozen. This was it. This was the moment her 2 worlds collided and destroyed everything she'd built. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Then she turned and pushed through the crowd, through the cameras and the whispers and the judging faces, and ran. She made it 3 blocks before someone grabbed her arm. Elena spun, hope flaring. But it wasn't Owen. It was a man in a dark suit. Professional. Dangerous. Ms. Ward, your father sent a car. Your 90 days are over. Time to come home. I have 36 days left. Not anymore. The man gestured to a black SUV at the curb. Your cover's blown. The experiment failed. Mr. Ward expects you back at the estate within the hour. Elena looked back toward Crossroads. Toward the cafe full of people and light and music. Toward the man whose heart she'd just broken. I can fix this, she said desperately. I can still. Ms. Ward. The man's voice was gentle but firm. It's over. And as Elena climbed into the SUV, as it pulled away from the only place she'd ever felt real, she realized something devastating. She'd come here to prove she could survive without her name. Instead, she'd learned she couldn't survive without Owen. And now she'd lost them both. Inside Crossroads, Owen stood among the slowly dispersing crowd, his hands gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Dorothy approached slowly. Owen, honey. Don't, he whispered. Please don't. That girl loves you. That girl is a liar. She's both. Dorothy's hand settled on his shoulder. Love and lies aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes people lie because the truth is too complicated. Too scary. Too real. Owen's eyes burned. She made a fool of me. No, sweetheart. She made you hope again. There's a difference. On the counter, Elena's phone, the cheap one she'd forgotten in her panic, buzzed with an incoming message. Owen picked it up without thinking. The screen showed a text thread. Dozens of threatening messages. Anonymous. True. And at the bottom, the most recent. Unknown number, told you Friday would be fun. Enjoy losing everything, princess. Your father's already pulling you out. My job here is done. MB. Matthew Barker. Owen's blood went cold. Barker hadn't just shown up tonight randomly. He'd been orchestrating this from the beginning. Threatening Elena. Forcing her hand. Setting up the public exposure. All to destroy any chance she had of helping save Crossroads. Because a cafe saved by a billionaire heiress would be worthless to his development plans. But a cafe destroyed by scandal? That he could buy for pennies. Owen had played right into it. He'd sent away the one person who could actually save him. And he'd done it in front of 73 witnesses and a dozen cameras. Oh God, he breathed. What have I done? Elena is gone. Owen knows the truth. And Barker is moving in for the kill. But this isn't over. Comment right now, how should Elena fight back? Because trust me, the next part is going to blow your mind. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You don't want to miss what happens next. The Ward estate looked exactly as Elena had left it 3 weeks ago. Marble floors that cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. Crystal chandeliers imported from Vienna. Walls covered in art that belonged in museums. Silence so complete and expensive it felt like suffocation. Elena stood in the foyer at 11 p.m., still wearing her thrift store clothes, her hands still raw from scrubbing cafe floors, and felt like a ghost haunting her own life. Elena. Her mother descended the curved staircase with the grace of someone who'd never hurried for anything in her life. Victoria Ward was 53 and looked 38, maintained by dermatologists and personal trainers and the particular preservation that came from never having worried about anything real. She looked at Elena the way one might examine a failed investment. "You're a mess," Victoria said simply. "Hello to you too, Mother. Don't be dramatic. You brought this on yourself." Victoria gestured toward the east wing. "Your father is waiting in his study. He's displeased." Elena almost laughed. Displeased? As if Elena had merely spilled wine on expensive carpet instead of having her heart publicly shattered and her identity exposed on social media. "I still have 36 days, Elena said. "The terms were 90 days. I completed 54. "The terms were 90 days of anonymity." Victoria's voice hardened. "Your face is currently trending on 3 social media platforms. There are photographers camped at our gates. The Times is running a feature on billionaire poverty tourism. You didn't just fail, Elena. You created a PR nightmare." "I fell in love." The words came out before Elena could stop them. "That wasn't part of the test, was it? You wanted me to learn what struggle looked like." I learned what it feels like to work until your hands bleed. To choose between eating and paying rent. To be invisible and small and desperate. And I learned what it feels like to fall for someone who sees past all the packaging to who you actually are." Victoria's expression didn't change. "And where is this great love now?" The question was a knife between Elena's ribs. "He told me to leave," Elena whispered. "Because I lied to him. Because everything he thought was real was just me playing pretend." "Then perhaps you learned the most important lesson after all." Victoria turned toward the stairs. "Money doesn't just change what you can buy, Elena. It changes what you are. And people like us, we don't get real love. We get transactions dressed up in sentiment. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be." She disappeared up the staircase, leaving Elena alone in the foyer. In a house worth $40 million. Feeling more alone than she'd ever felt in her cramped studio apartment. Charles Ward's study was exactly what you'd expect from a man who'd built a global empire through ruthless efficiency. Dark wood, leather, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking grounds that employed 15 full-time gardeners. A desk that had once belonged to a railroad baron who died alone despite his billions. Elena's father sat behind that desk now, reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up when she entered. "Sit." Elena sat. Charles read for another 30 seconds, a power play Elena had seen him use in boardrooms to break nervous executives. Finally, he set the tablet down and looked at his daughter. 54 days, he said. "I genuinely didn't think you'd last a week." "Should I be flattered?" "You should be quiet." But his voice carried something that might have been respect. "You worked hard. Harder than I expected." The cafe owner, Reese, he didn't know who you were. Not until tonight. And you developed feelings for him. It wasn't a question. Charles Ward didn't ask questions he didn't already know the answers to. "Yes," Elena said quietly. "Does he reciprocate?" Elena's throat tightened. "He did. Until he found out I'd been lying to him about everything." Charles nodded slowly, like this confirmed something he'd suspected. Love is complicated when money is involved. People never know if they love you or your bank account. It's one of the costs of wealth. "He didn't want my money. He wanted," Elena's voice broke. "He wanted me. The version of me that didn't exist. The broke cleaner who understood what struggling actually meant. And now he hates me. Charles stood, moving to the windows. The grounds were lit by landscape lighting that cost more per month than Owen's Café made. Your mother thinks you failed the test, he said. That getting exposed means you weren't clever enough, careful enough, strategic enough to maintain your cover. And what do you think? Charles was quiet for a long moment. I think you were sabotaged, he said finally. I had my team investigate after the media exposure. Matthew Barker, the development executive who's been pressuring Mr. Reese to sell. He hired a private investigator to identify you. He's been threatening you for weeks, hasn't he? Elena's breath caught. How did you? Because I would have done the same thing in his position. Charles turned to face her. He needed that property. A cafe saved by a billionaire heiress becomes a media darling, untouchable. But a cafe destroyed by scandal? That's just another failing business he can acquire for pennies. So I was a pawn. Everyone's a pawn, Elena. The question is whether you move yourself or let others move you. He returned to his desk. I'm prepared to make you an offer. Elena's stomach clenched. What kind of offer? I'll buy Crossroads Cafe. Pay off all of Mr. Reese's debts. Set up a trust to cover his mother's medical expenses. Ensure he never has to worry about money again. Charles pulled out a contract, slid it across the desk. In exchange, you sign this. You agree to take your position as COO of Ward International immediately. You forget about your little experiment. You move on. Elena stared at the contract. Everything Owen needed. Everything she'd wanted to give him but couldn't without revealing herself. All she had to do was walk away. And if I don't sign? She asked. Charles's expression hardened. Then I do nothing. Barker's development group moves forward with eviction proceedings. Mr. Reese loses his cafe, his father's legacy, and any chance of paying his mother's medical bills. He loses everything while you watch from the safety of your trust fund. You're blackmailing me. I'm teaching you. Charles leaned forward. This is what power looks like, Elena. Not the romanticized version you experienced playing poor. Real power is making impossible choices where every option hurts someone. You can save him and lose him. Or you can refuse to save him and lose him anyway while also condemning him to financial ruin. Elena's hands shook as she picked up the contract. It was comprehensive. Brutal. Complete. Sign here, and Owen would be saved. Sign here, and she'd never see him again. Sign here, and she'd spend the rest of her life wondering if he could have forgiven her, if they could have found their way back to each other, if love could survive truth. I need time to think, Elena whispered. You have until Monday morning. Charles's voice was final. Barker's eviction proceedings begin Monday afternoon. After that, even I can't stop the legal machinery fast enough to save Crossroads. Elena stood on shaking legs. One more thing, Charles said as she reached the door. I read the social media posts from tonight. The people who attended that open mic event. They're calling it the best night Crossroads has had in years. They're defending you, actually. Saying you brought life back to a dying cafe, that your money doesn't matter compared to your genuine care. He paused. Public opinion is fickle, Elena. But it's also powerful. Perhaps more powerful than you realize. Elena didn't respond. She just walked out, the contract clutched in her hand, feeling like she was drowning in air. 247 miles away, Owen sat in his mother's hospital room at 2 a.m., holding her hand while she slept. Patricia Reese looked smaller than she had even a week ago. The cancer was winning. Everyone knew it. The doctors. The nurses. Owen. Patricia. But she kept fighting anyway, the same way she'd fought every hardship in her life, with stubborn grace and a smile that refused to die even when her body was giving up. You look terrible, honey. Owen's head snapped up. His mother's eyes were open, foggy with morphine but aware. I'm fine, Mom. You're a terrible liar. Patricia's smile was weak but real. What happened? You were so excited about tonight. The open mic. The girl who was helping you. The girl. Elena. Owen's chest tightened. It didn't go how I planned, he said carefully. Tell me. So Owen did. He told her everything about Elena's real identity, about the public exposure, about the lies and the truth and the devastating realization that the woman he'd fallen for didn't actually exist. Patricia listened quietly, her breathing labored but her attention complete. "Do you love her?" she asked when he finished. "Mom, she lied to me about everything." "I didn't ask if she lied. I asked if you love her." Owen dropped his head into his hands. "It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters." Patricia squeezed his hand with what little strength she had left. "Owen, sweetheart, let me tell you something about your father. When we met, I didn't tell him I had a trust fund from my grandmother. I was so tired of men who wanted my money instead of me. So I pretended to be just another waitress." Owen's head jerked up. "What?" "I lied to him for 6 months. Let him pay for dates he couldn't afford. Let him worry about providing for me." Patricia's eyes were distant with memory. When the truth came out, he was furious. Felt betrayed, manipulated, made a fool of. He walked out and didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. "I never knew that. Because we didn't tell you. It was our story, our mistake, our recovery." Patricia's breathing grew more labored. "But here's what your father realized during those 3 weeks. The girl he fell in love with, the one who laughed at his jokes and believed in his dreams and made him feel seen, she was real. The money didn't change who she was. It just changed what she could hide behind." She coughed, wincing with pain. "You're Elena," Patricia continued. "She could have left any time. Could have walked away the first time you yelled at her, the first time you cut her pay, the first time you made her feel small. But she stayed. She scrubbed floors until her hands bled. She learned your business. She brought your father's dream back to life. Because it was an experiment for her," Owen said bitterly. "A character-building exercise. Maybe it started that way." Patricia's grip tightened. "But I saw the way she looked at you when she brought you lunch last week. I was having a good day, remember? You brought her to meet me." Owen remembered. Elena had been nervous, gentle, asking Patricia about her life with genuine interest. She'd made his mother laugh, really laugh, for the first time in months. "That girl wasn't acting. That girl was falling in love with my son. I saw it. Clear as day." "Then why didn't she tell me the truth?" "For the same reason I didn't tell your father." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Because she was terrified you'd look at her differently. That you'd see the money instead of the girl. And based on how you reacted tonight, she was right to be scared." The words hit like a physical blow. "I was hurt," Owen protested. "She lied. And you loved her anyway." Patricia pulled his hand to her chest. "Love doesn't disappear because someone lied, baby. It just gets complicated. Messy. The question is whether you're brave enough to fight through the mess or if you'd rather stay safe and alone." Owen's vision blurred. "I don't know how to fix this." "Start with the truth. Your truth." Patricia's breathing was getting worse. Owen reached for the call button, but she stopped him. "I'm okay. But Owen, listen to me. I don't have much time left. Days maybe. And I need to know you won't be alone when I'm gone. Mom, don't. I need to know you'll let someone in. That you'll choose love over pride. Over hurt. Over fear." Her eyes held his. "Promise me. Promise me you'll fight for her." Owen's throat closed. "What if she won't forgive me? What if I destroyed?" "Then at least you tried. At least you were brave enough to choose love." Patricia smiled through tears. "Your father used to say that Crossroads was about paths intersecting. About moments that change everything. Elena was your crossroads, sweetheart. Don't walk away from her just because the intersection is messy." The monitor started beeping. Nurses rushed in. And Owen sat there, holding his mother's hand, realizing she was right. "Tonight I found out her name is Elena Ward. That she's a billionaire. That everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. Except it wasn't. The girl who scrubbed my floors, that was real. The girl who believed in this cafe when I didn't, that was real. The girl who looked at me like I mattered, like I was more than my failures and my debt and my dying business, she was real." Owen's eyes glistened. The money didn't make her fake. It just made her scared. Scared I'd see the money instead of her. Scared I'd want what she had instead of who she was. And tonight, I proved her fear was justified. Because the moment I found out, I sent her away. I chose pride over love. Hurt over hope. And I was wrong. He leaned closer to the camera. Elena, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to explain. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to hide. I'm sorry I was too scared and stupid to see that love doesn't care about bank accounts or social class or any of the bullshit society says matters. His voice dropped to a whisper. Come back, please. Come back to Crossroads. Come back to me. Let me prove that I can love all of you, the billionaire and the terrible cleaner and everything in between. The video ended. 3 million views in 2 hours. Elena sat on her childhood bed in a mansion that felt like a mausoleum and sobbed. Because Owen was fighting for her. But in 36 hours, there would be nothing left to fight for. Crossroads would be gone. Destroyed by her father's ultimatum and Barker's greed and her own cowardice. Unless she made a choice. Sign her father's contract, save Owen's Café and lose him forever. Or refuse to sign, keep her freedom and watch him lose everything. Either way, she lost. Either way, love wasn't enough. And that was the cruelest lesson of all. Owen's fighting for love. Elena's trapped by impossible choices. And the clock is ticking. Comment below, what would you do in Elena's position? And real talk, do you think Owen's apology was enough? If you're not subscribed, subscribe now. Monday is coming. And so is the truth. Part 7. The Turning Point. Elena watched Owen's video 17 times. By the 18th viewing, something shifted inside her. She'd spent her entire life being moved like a chess piece. Her parents decided where she went to school, who she socialized with, what version of herself she presented to the world. Even this experiment, this 90-day test, had been their idea, their terms, their control. And she'd accepted it because she thought she had to earn the right to be herself. But watching Owen bare his heart to 3 million strangers, she realized something devastating and liberating simultaneously. She'd been asking the wrong question. Not, how do I prove I'm worthy of my inheritance? But, why do I need to prove anything at all? Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Elena walked into her father's study without knocking. Charles looked up from his newspaper, because of course he still read physical newspapers, delivered by staff who'd been awake since 4 a.m. to ensure he had them with his coffee. I'm not signing your contract, Elena said. Charles set down the paper with deliberate calm. Then you're condemning Mr. Reese to? I'm not finished. Elena's voice was steady. Steel beneath silk. I'm not signing your contract because it's built on a false premise. You don't get to buy my life, father. Not anymore. Elena, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? Elena laughed, and it was her mother's laugh, cold and cutting and refined. You sent me into the world to prove I could survive without the Ward name. I did more than survive. Thrive. I worked harder than I've ever worked. I built something real. I fell in love with someone who saw me, actually saw me, without the packaging. She moved closer to the desk. And yes, it fell apart. Because I was scared. Because I lied. Because I've spent my entire life believing that who I am isn't enough without the money to validate it. Elena's voice cracked. But Owen's video taught me something you never did. Love doesn't require perfection. It requires truth. Courage. The willingness to be seen, even when being seen is terrifying. Charles's expression remained neutral, but Elena saw the flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or respect. So here's what's going to happen, Elena continued. I'm going to save Crossroads Café. Not with your money. With mine. The trust fund from grandmother Charlotte, the one that's legally mine at 25, no conditions attached. That money is meant for me to do with as I choose. And I choose to invest it in something that matters. Elena pulled out her phone, showed him the social media explosion. 3 million views on Owen's video. 50,000 new followers for Crossroads in 12 hours. News outlets requesting interviews. Food bloggers wanting to feature the cafe. This isn't charity, father. It's a sound business investment with massive PR potential. She set the phone on his desk. And then I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to take my position at Ward International. Not because you're holding Owens Café hostage, but because I'm actually qualified. Because I'm smarter and more capable than half your executive team. Because I earned it. Charles leaned back in his chair, studying his daughter like he'd never quite seen her before. You've changed, he said quietly. I grew up. Elena held his gaze. No thanks to you. For a long moment, father and daughter stared at each other across the enormous desk. Then Charles did something Elena had seen perhaps 3 times in her entire life. He smiled. Genuinely. Your grandmother would have liked this version of you, he said. She always said you had steel in your spine. I'm glad she was right. Elena blinked, thrown by the sudden warmth. That trust fund is worth $8 million, Charles continued. You're going to invest it in a cafe that makes barely enough to cover rent? I'm going to invest it in a man who makes me want to be better than I was raised to be. Elena straightened. And yes, in a business with significant growth potential in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. I've already drawn up a plan. Expansion into the adjacent property, diversification of revenue streams, community partnerships, experiential marketing. You've been busy. I had a good teacher. Elena's voice softened. You taught me to see potential where others see failure. To find value in overlooked investments. Crossroads is undervalued, father. But it won't be for long. Charles nodded slowly. Then he pulled out a different folder from his desk drawer. I had my attorneys draw this up yesterday. Just in case. He slid it across. It's everything I offered before, debt payment, medical expenses, business investment. But with different terms. You maintain complete autonomy. No strings. No control. The money is structured as a business loan with fair interest rates, not a buyout. Mr. Reese retains full ownership. Elena stared at the documents. Why would you do this? Because you're my daughter. And despite what you think, I want you to be happy. Charles's expression was unreadable. I also want you to learn that sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. It's strategy. Your $8 million will go further combined with family resources. Unless pride is more important than practicality. It was a test. Everything with Charles Ward was a test. But maybe Elena thought that was okay. Maybe she'd finally learned how to pass them on her own terms. I'll accept the medical expenses coverage, Elena said carefully. Patricia Reese deserves the best care possible, and Owen shouldn't have to choose between his mother's comfort and his business. But the cafe investment, that's mine. I need him to know I'm fighting for this because I choose to, not because my father's money is solving my problems again. Charles considered this. Fair enough. The medical trust will be anonymous. He'll never know it came from Ward Resources. Thank you, Elena whispered. Don't thank me yet. Charles stood, moving to the window. Matthew Barker is well-connected and vindictive. He's not going to surrender that property easily. And the court of public opinion is fickle. Today they're on your side. Tomorrow they might decide you're just another rich girl buying her way out of consequences. Then I'll prove them wrong. How? Elena pulled out her phone, opened her recording app, and pressed the button she'd been too scared to press for 3 weeks. By telling the truth. Of it. On my terms. Sunday, 3 p.m. Elena posted a video. She sat in her childhood bedroom, deliberately showing the opulence, the wealth, the privilege. No hiding. No pretending. My name is Elena Ward, she began, looking directly at the camera. I'm 25 years old. My net worth is $2.3 billion. And 3 weeks ago, I started working as a cleaner in a cafe called Crossroads for $9 an hour. She took a breath. I want to tell you why. And I want to tell you the truth, not the version the tabloids are selling, but the real, messy, complicated truth. For 8 minutes, Elena spoke. She told them about her parents' ultimatum, about living behind glass walls her entire life, about wanting desperately to know if she could survive as just Elena, not Elena Ward. She told them about Owen, about falling in love with someone who saw her without the packaging, about learning what real work felt like, what real struggle looked like, what real connection meant when it wasn't built on transactions. She told them about the lies. About being too scared to reveal herself because she'd never been loved for who she was instead of what she had. And she told them about her choice. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Elena said, her voice steady. "I'm not asking you to understand why a billionaire would pretend to be poor. I'm asking you to see that money doesn't make feelings less real. It doesn't make fear less valid. It doesn't make love less powerful." She leaned closer. "I'm investing my personal trust fund into Crossroads Café because I believe in it. Because Owen Reese is the hardest working, most dedicated person I've ever met. Because his father built something meaningful, and it deserves to survive. Not because I'm trying to buy my way out of guilt, but because I'm choosing to invest in something that matters." Elena's eyes glistened. "And I'm doing this whether Owen forgives me or not. Because the girl who cleaned those floors, she was real. The girl who learned to pull espresso shots and serve impatient customers and scrub bathrooms, she was real. The girl who fell in love with a man who made her want to be brave, she's real." She smiled through tears. "I'm all of these things. Billionaire and cleaner. Privileged and scared. Powerful and vulnerable. And I'm done apologizing for the contradictions. I'm done hiding who I am because I'm afraid it's too much or not enough or too complicated." Elena looked directly at the camera. "Owen, if you're watching, I'm coming back to Crossroads. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. And I'm going to fight for that cafe with everything I have. I'm going to fight for us. Not because I think money can fix what I broke, but because you taught me that love is worth fighting for even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy." She paused. "You said you wanted all of me. The billionaire and the terrible cleaner and everything in between. Well, here I am. All of me. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just Elena. Scared and hopeful and desperately in love with you." The video ended. Elena posted it before she could second-guess herself. Then she turned off her phone and packed a bag. Monday morning, 5:47 a.m. Elena stood outside Crossroads Cafe in the pre-dawn darkness. The lights were on inside. Through the window, she could see Owen prepping for the day, his movements practiced and solitary. Her heart hammered. What if he'd changed his mind? What if his video had been a moment of weakness he now regretted? The door opened. Owen stood in the threshold, backlit the same way he'd been that first morning when she'd returned after he'd asked her to leave. But this time, his expression was different. This time, he was smiling. "You're early," he said softly. "I couldn't sleep." "Neither could I." Owen's hand gripped the door frame. "I watched your video. 47 times if we're counting. I watched yours 18 times. I win." Elena laughed, shaky and tearful and real. "This isn't a competition." "Isn't it though?" Owen stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Who can be braver? Who can be more vulnerable? Who can fight harder for this impossible thing between us?" Elena walked inside. The cafe smelled like coffee and home. "I'm sorry," they said simultaneously. Then laughed. Owen moved closer. Close enough that Elena could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the hope fighting with fear, the love he was trying so hard to protect. "I'm sorry I lied," Elena whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you with the truth. I'm sorry I made you feel like a project or an experiment or anything less than." "I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to explain," Owen interrupted. "I'm sorry I chose pride over understanding. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to be someone else to be worthy of." "Stop." Elena's hand found his cheek. "We both screwed up. We both let fear win. Can we just start from here? From truth?" Owen's hand covered hers, pressing it against his face. "Hi," he said. "I'm Owen Reese. I'm 28 years old. I own a failing cafe, I'm drowning in debt, my mother is dying, and I'm completely, terrifyingly in love with you." Elena's breath caught. "Hi," she managed. "I'm Elena Ward. I'm 25 years old. I'm a billionaire heiress with trust issues and terrible espresso-making skills, and I'm completely, terrifyingly in love with you too. Your espresso skills have actually improved. Don't ruin the moment." Owen laughed. Then his expression grew serious. "Your video said you're investing in Crossroads. Elena, I can't let you, It's not charity. It's business. Elena pulled out her phone, showed him the detailed plan she'd spent all night creating. The cafe has potential. Serious potential. The social media attention alone is worth hundreds of thousands in free marketing. But we need to act fast. Expand the menu, renovate the space, create experiences that keep people coming back. I have the capital. You have the vision and the heart. We could be partners. Real partners. Owen studied the documents, his expression unreadable. Partners, he repeated slowly. 50-50 ownership, Elena said quickly. I invest the capital, you contribute the business and your expertise. All decisions made jointly. Profits split evenly. It's a standard partnership agreement, nothing predatory or… Elena. She stopped. Owen set down the phone and pulled her close, his hands settling on her waist with a tenderness that made her heart stutter. I don't want to be your business partner, he said quietly. Elena's stomach dropped. Oh, I want to be your partner. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I want to build this cafe with you. I want to fight with you and laugh with you and fall asleep next to you and wake up to your terrible bed hair. I want all of it. The messy, complicated, impossible all of it. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. Really? Really? Owen's forehead pressed against hers. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more lies. No more hiding. If we're doing this, really doing this, we do it with complete honesty. Even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. I promise, Elena whispered. No more lies. And I promise to actually listen when you try to tell me hard truths instead of shutting down like an idiot. Deal. Owen's smile was devastating. So we're really doing this? Billionaire heiress and broke cafe owner against the world. Actually, billionaire heiress and brilliant cafe owner with a solid business plan and excellent survival instincts. I like that version better. Me too. Owen leaned in slowly, giving Elena every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that tasted like coffee and tears and new beginnings. Like truth after lies. Like hope after despair. Like coming home to a place you didn't know you'd been searching for your entire life. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Owen kept her close. We still have to deal with Barker, he murmured against her hair. He's not going to give up easily. I know. Elena's arms tightened around him. But we'll fight him together. With lawyers and public opinion and every resource we have. He wanted to destroy us. Instead, he made us stronger. Poetic justice. The best kind. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the cafe quiet around them. Then Elena's phone rang. She pulled it out, ready to ignore it, until she saw the caller ID. Mercy General Hospital. Owen saw her face change. What's wrong? It's the hospital. Elena answered, her heart in her throat. Hello. She listened. Her expression shifted from fear to something else. Something that made Owen's breath catch. We'll be right there, Elena said, hanging up. Owen, it's your mom. She's asking for both of us. They've found each other again. But Patricia is calling. And Monday afternoon, Barker's eviction proceedings begin. The final confrontation is coming. And you're not ready for how this ends. Patricia Reese looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. Elena had seen her only once before. That day Owen had brought her to meet his mother during one of her good days. Patricia had been weak then, her skin paper-thin, her body ravaged by cancer. But she'd been bright, alert, full of a warmth that explained exactly where Owen had learned to care so deeply beneath his protective armor. Now, she looked like a woman saying goodbye. Owen gripped Elena's hand as they entered the private room, the one Elena knew he could barely afford, the one he'd fought the insurance company for weeks to secure. There's my boy, Patricia whispered, her smile gentle despite the pain medication glazing her eyes. And there's the girl who broke his heart and then taught him how to put it back together. Mom, Owen's voice cracked. Save your strength. For what? I'm dying, sweetheart. Might as well use my last words for something that matters. Patricia's gaze shifted to Elena. Come closer, honey. Let me look at you. Elena moved to the bedside, her throat tight. Patricia studied her with the particular intensity of someone who didn't have time for superficial observations. You look different from your pictures. Softer in person. More real. I feel more real, Elena whispered. Your son did that. No, you did that. He just gave you a reason to stop hiding. Patricia's hand, frighteningly fragile, reached for Elena's. I need to tell you both something. And I need you to listen without interrupting, because I don't have the energy for arguments. Owen settled on the other side of the bed. Mom, whatever it is. Hush. But Patricia's tone was warm. 3 years ago, when your father got sick, we were already drowning in debt. The cafe was struggling. I had just been diagnosed. We were looking at losing everything. Owen stiffened. Dad never said. Because I made him promise not to. Because you were in business school, trying to build your own future, and we didn't want you dropping everything to save us. Patricia's breathing was labored. But someone did save us. An anonymous donor paid off $60,000 of our medical debt. Covered your father's experimental treatments. Gave us 6 more months together that we wouldn't have had. Elena felt something cold slide down her spine. We spent years trying to figure out who it was, Patricia continued. The hospital wouldn't tell us. The lawyers claimed confidentiality. But last week, when I saw all the news about Elena Ward, I asked my sister, you remember Aunt Carol, the one who works in hospital administration? Owen nodded, his face pale. I asked her to dig into the old records. To find out who our angel donor was. Patricia's eyes, so like Owen's, fixed on Elena. It was the Charlotte Ward Memorial Foundation. Your grandmother's charity organization, Elena. Which means your family has been helping us for 3 years without ever asking for recognition or gratitude. The room went silent. Elena's mind raced. Her grandmother had died 4 years ago. The foundation ran independently, making grants based on Charlotte Ward's specific criteria, helping working families facing medical catastrophe, supporting small businesses in crisis, investing in people instead of just causes. Elena hadn't known. She'd never been involved in the foundation's operations. But her grandmother, the one person in her family who'd actually seen her, who'd left Elena that trust fund with no strings attached, had somehow found Patricia and Owen years before Elena ever walked into Crossroads. I don't understand, Elena breathed. Neither do I. But here's what I know. Patricia squeezed both their hands. This isn't coincidence. This isn't chance. My Patrick used to say the cafe was called Crossroads because it's where paths intersect at exactly the right moment. You two were always meant to find each other. Your grandmother knew it before either of you did. Owen's jaw worked. That's impossible. Love usually is. Patricia smiled. But I didn't call you here to talk about fate or destiny or whatever you want to call it. I called you here because I have something for you. Both of you. She gestured weakly toward the nightstand. Owen pulled open the drawer and extracted an envelope, old, yellowed, sealed with wax. Your father wrote this 2 days before he died, Patricia said. Made me promise to give it to you when you found the person worth fighting for. Not just anyone. The one. The person who makes you want to be braver than you are. Owen stared at the envelope like it might burn him. Open it, Patricia urged. I've waited 3 years. I'm not dying before I see your face when you read it. With shaking hands, Owen broke the seal. Inside was a letter in his father's handwriting and something else. A property deed. Owen's eyes widened. This is the building next to Crossroads. Your father bought it 6 months before he died. Took out every loan he could find, mortgaged our house, bet everything on expansion. Patricia's voice was sad and proud simultaneously. He never got to use it. Got sick before he could start renovations. I've been paying the taxes on it for 3 years, barely, keeping it out of foreclosure because I knew someday you'd need it. Elena leaned over Owen's shoulder, reading the letter. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And if your mother is giving you this deed, you've found someone worth building a future with. The cafe was never meant to stay small, son. It was meant to grow. To expand. To become something bigger than my dream. To become yours. I bought the adjacent property because I believed in possibility. In second chances. in building something that lasts. The girl your mother chose to give you this, love her fiercely. Fight for her. Build with her. And remember that the best inheritances aren't money or property. They're the courage to dream bigger than your fear. I'm proud of you. I always have been. Owen's hands trembled. Tears streamed down his face, falling onto the letter. He knew, Owen whispered. Somehow he knew I'd try to do this alone. That I'd be too scared to let someone help. Your father understood fear intimately. He fought it every day of his life. Patricia's breathing was getting worse. The monitor beside her bed started beeping faster. Elena, honey, come here. Elena leaned close. That boy loves you with everything he has. It's going to scare him sometimes. He's going to try to protect you by pushing you away. Don't let him. Patricia's grip was surprisingly strong. And you're going to doubt yourself. Going to wonder if you're too much or not enough. You're neither. You're exactly right. Trust that. I will, Elena promised, tears blurring her vision. Good. Patricia settled back against the pillows. Now get out of this depressing hospital room and go save that cafe. I want to read about your victory in tomorrow's paper. Mom, we're not leaving you. Yes, you are. Barker's eviction hearing is in 2 hours. I didn't raise you to miss important appointments because of sentiment. But Patricia's smile was gentle. I'll still be here tonight. We'll celebrate then. Now go. Both of you. Make me proud. The courthouse at 2 p.m. was already swarming with reporters. Barker's legal team had tipped them off, another calculated move to create pressure, to make this about spectacle instead of substance. But what Barker hadn't counted on was Elena Ward knowing how to use spectacle as a weapon. Ready? She asked Owen as they climbed the courthouse steps. Owen adjusted his tie, one of his father's, Patricia had insisted he wear, and nodded. Ready. The courtroom was packed. Barker sat at the defendant's table with 3 expensive lawyers. He smirked when Elena and Owen entered, clearly confident in his victory. What he didn't see was the group gathering in the back of the courtroom. Dorothy, the artists from Open Mic Night, regular customers from Crossroads, local business owners from the neighborhood. 53 people, all wearing handmade t-shirts that read, Crossroads Matters. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, called the room to order. Mr. Barker, you've filed for immediate eviction based on breach of lease terms. Mr. Reese, you're contesting this eviction. Let's hear arguments. Barker's lead attorney stood, a man who probably billed $1,000 an hour. Your Honor, this is a simple matter of contract law. Mr. Reese is $18,000 in arrears on his lease payments. My client has been extraordinarily patient, but patience has limits. We're asking the court to grant immediate eviction so the property can be put to better use. Better use? The judge repeated. Elaborate. The property will be incorporated into a luxury development that will bring significant economic growth to the neighborhood. Jobs, tax revenue, modernization. Hendricks Development Group has a proven track record of displacing local businesses and destroying community character. Elena interrupted, standing. The judge's eyebrow raised. And you are? Elena Ward. I'm Mr. Reese's business partner and legal representative. Elena pulled out a folder thick with documents. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence that this eviction is not about unpaid rent. It's about systematic manipulation designed to force a property sale. Objection. Barker's attorney sputtered. Ms. Ward isn't even a licensed attorney. I don't need to be. I'm appearing as a party with legal standing in this matter. Elena's voice was cool. Princeton debate team combined with years of watching her father destroy opponents in boardrooms. 3 days ago, I became a 50% owner of Crossroads Café through a legally binding partnership agreement, which means I have every right to defend our business interests. She approached the bench, handing the judge a stack of documents. These are records showing that Hendricks Development Group has systematically acquired 17 properties in this neighborhood using the same pattern, lowball offers followed by manufactured crises. Sudden rent increases. Anonymous health code complaints. Targeted harassment designed to force sales. The judge studied the documents, her expression darkening. Furthermore, Elena continued, we have evidence that Mr. Barker hired a private investigator to uncover my identity specifically to sabotage our café's revival. He then orchestrated a public exposure designed to create scandal and destroy community support. That's slander. Barker stood, his face red. You can't prove. Actually, I can. Elena pulled out her phone, connected it to the courtroom's display system. These are text messages from an anonymous number threatening to expose my identity. The number was traced, legally, through a private investigator I hired, to a phone purchased by Hendricks Development Group's legal department. The messages appeared on screen. Dozens of them. Each one threatening, manipulative, designed to terrorize. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Your Honor, Barker's attorney tried to recover, even if these allegations were true, which we deny, they have no bearing on the fact that Mr. Reese owes $18,000 in back rent. About that, Owen stood, his voice steady. I'd like to submit payment in full. Plus interest. Plus the next 6 months in advance. He handed the judge a cashier's check. Barker's face went white. That's impossible. You don't have. I have a business partner with resources and a solid investment strategy. Owen's smile was sharp. Turns out my cafe is worth fighting for. Worth investing in. Worth saving. The judge examined the check, then looked at Barker with an expression that could freeze lava. Mr. Barker, I'm denying your eviction petition. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into Hendricks Development Group's acquisition practices in this neighborhood. If even half of what Ms. Ward has presented is accurate, you'll be facing significantly more serious legal challenges than a simple eviction hearing. Your Honor, you can't. I can and I am. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell. The courtroom exploded in cheers. Barker grabbed his attorneys, his face purple with rage, and stormed out. But Elena wasn't watching him. She was watching Owen, who stood frozen in the middle of the courtroom, looking like a man who just remembered how to breathe. Dorothy rushed forward, pulling them both into a fierce hug. You did it. You magnificent children, you actually did it. The reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, questions flying. Elena, is it true you invested $8 million? Owen, how does it feel to beat Hendricks Development? Are you two together? Is this a business partnership or a romantic one? Elena looked at Owen. Owen looked at Elena. And simultaneously they smiled. Owen pulled her close, right there in the courthouse, in front of 53 supporters and 24 cameras. It's both, he said and kissed her. The cameras went insane. The evening news led with the story. Billionaire heiress and cafe owner defeat corporate development in landmark case. Social media exploded. At Crossroads Cafe, we won. Thank you to everyone who believed in us. Open mic night this Friday. Come celebrate with us. Hashtag Crossroads Matters. 243,000 likes. 67,000 shares. At Dorothy Strachey, love wins. Community wins. Small business wins. And that kiss? Chef's kiss hashtag Crossroads Matters. 89,000 likes. At Emma Loves Poetry, I'm not crying, you're crying. Actually no, we're all crying. This is the content we needed. Hashtag Crossroads Matters hashtag love wins. 156,000 likes. But the moment that mattered most happened at 9 p.m., back at Mercy General Hospital. Elena and Owen entered Patricia's room carrying a tablet showing the news coverage, the social media explosion, the victory they'd won. Patricia was awake, her breathing assisted by oxygen now, but her eyes were bright. Did we win? She whispered. We won, Mom. Owen's voice broke. We won everything. Patricia smiled. Tell me. So they did. Every detail. Every moment. Every small triumph. And when they finished, Patricia reached for both their hands. I'm so proud, she whispered. Your father would be so proud. You fought for something that matters. You fought for each other. You won. We couldn't have done it without you, Elena said. Without your strength. Your wisdom. Your blessing. Oh honey, you had my blessing the moment I saw how you looked at my boy. Patricia's breathing was labored now. Promise me something. Both of you. Anything, they said together. Don't waste time. Don't wait for perfect. Don't let fear stop you from building the life you want. Patricia's grip tightened weakly. Life is so short. Love is the only thing that makes it long enough. Remember that. We will, Owen promised, tears streaming down his face. Good. Patricia settled back, her eyes starting to close. Now let me rest. Big day tomorrow. Want to look good for all those reporters who'll be asking about my brilliant son and his brilliant girlfriend. Elena and Owen sat with her until she fell asleep. And then, hand in hand, they walked out into the night. Into a future they'd fought for. Into a love they'd earned. Into a life that was finally, beautifully real. 1 week later, the headline in the New York Times business section read, "How a struggling cafe became a model for community-centered business. The Crossroads Story." The article detailed Elena's investment strategy, Owen's vision, and the community response that had turned Crossroads into the most talked-about small business in the country. Reservations were booked 3 weeks out. The adjacent property, Patrick's final gift, was already under renovation. And in the back office, Elena and Owen worked side by side on expansion plans, their hands occasionally brushing, their conversations punctuated by kisses and laughter and the particular joy of building something together. "We need to hire more staff," Elena said, studying spreadsheets. "We can't keep up with demand with just the two of us and Dorothy part-time." "Agreed. But I want to be careful about who we bring in. Cultural fit matters more than experience." "Look at you, sounding like a real C." Owen grinned. "I learned from the best." His phone rang. The hospital. Both of them froze. Owen answered, his hand finding Elena's. He listened. His expression shifted. "We'll be right there," he said, hanging up. Elena's heart clenched. "Owen. She's awake. Blurt. She wants us there." His voice was thick. "The doctor said, he said she's comfortable. That it's time to say goodbye." They drove to Mercy General in silence, their hands clasped tight. Patricia Reese died at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, with her son holding one hand and the girl he loved holding the other. She went peacefully, her last words a whisper that only Owen heard, "Love her well, baby. Love her the way your father loved me, like she's the answer to every question you were too afraid to ask." And then she was gone. The silence that followed was profound. Not empty, just complete. Like the final note of a beautiful song that you wanted to last forever but knew had to end. Elena held Owen as he broke, his shoulders shaking with grief that had been held back by hope and desperation and the particular denial that comes with watching someone you love die slowly. Now there was nothing left to hold back. So Owen grieved and Elena stayed. The way love does. The funeral was held on Friday. The small cemetery chapel couldn't hold everyone who came. Crossroads customers, neighborhood business owners, people who'd only known Patricia through Owen's stories but felt connected to her anyway. Dorothy gave a eulogy that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure, talking about Patricia's fierce love, her terrible cooking, her ability to make everyone feel seen and valued. "She told me once," Dorothy said, her voice strong despite the tears, "that she wasn't afraid of dying. She was only afraid of leaving Owen alone. But she didn't leave him alone, did she? She made sure he had someone to fight for. Someone to build with. Someone to love." Dorothy looked directly at Elena. "She told me 3 days before she passed that Elena Ward was the best thing that ever happened to her son. Not because Elena has money, but because Elena has heart. And in the end, that's the only inheritance that matters." Elena wept openly, no longer caring about composure or performance or any of the armor she'd spent 25 years building. Owen spoke last, his voice rough but steady. "My mom taught me that crossroads aren't just about paths intersecting," he said. "They're about choices. About deciding which direction to go when you're scared and lost and don't know if you're strong enough for the journey." He looked at Elena. "She taught me to choose love. Even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. Because love is the only thing that makes us brave enough to become who we're meant to be." His hand found Elena's. "I choose love. I choose this woman who cleaned my floors and saved my cafe and taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the only real strength that exists. I choose building a future instead of hiding in the past. I choose hope. Owen's voice cracked. And Mom, wherever you are, thank you. For everything. For raising me to be brave enough to let someone in. For fighting so hard to stay long enough to see me happy. For loving me well. He pressed a kiss to his fingertips, then raised them to the sky. I promise to love her the way Dad loved you. Like she's the answer to every question I was too afraid to ask. There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. Patricia Mary Reese was buried next to her husband Patrick in the plot she'd purchased 15 years earlier. The headstone was simple. Beloved mother, wife, friend. She taught us that love multiplies when you give it away. 1958 to 2024. After the service, after the reception, after the last guest had left, Elena and Owen stood at the grave in the fading autumn light. She would have loved what we're building, Owen said quietly. The cafe expansion. The community programs. All of it. She does love it, Elena corrected gently. Wherever she is. Owen pulled Elena close, his chin resting on her head. I couldn't have survived this without you. Yes, you could have. But I'm grateful you didn't have to. They stood in silence, two people who'd found each other in the midst of chaos and chosen to build something beautiful from broken pieces. I want to do something, Owen said suddenly. Something to honor her. Both my parents, actually. Tell me. The expansion space, the property my dad bought. I want to turn part of it into a community center. Free meeting space for local artists. Resources for small business owners. A place where people can get help without judgment. Owen's voice grew stronger. We'll call it the Patricia and Patrick Reese Community Foundation. Fund it through the cafe's profits. Make it sustainable. Elena's heart swelled. Owen, that's perfect. But the cost will be worth it. Because profit without purpose is just greed with better PR. He pulled back to look at her. You taught me that. Showed me that wealth is only meaningful when you use it to lift others up. Your parents taught you that. I just reminded you. Owen cupped her face in his hands. You saved me, Elena Ward. In every way a person can be saved. No, Elena whispered. You saved me. From a life that looked perfect but felt empty. From believing that who I am isn't enough without money to validate it. From being too scared to be real. Then we saved each other. Yeah, Elena smiled through tears. We did. Owen kissed her there, in the cemetery, with his parents watching from wherever they'd gone. And it felt like a beginning. 3 months later, Crossroads Café had been completely transformed. The original space had been renovated with Elena's investment and Owen's vision, exposed brick, warm lighting, furniture that balanced vintage charm with modern comfort. The espresso machine had been replaced with top-of-the-line equipment. The menu had expanded to include pastries from a local baker, sandwiches made with ingredients from neighborhood farms, specialty drinks that had people lining up around the block. But it was the expansion that truly took people's breath away. The adjacent property, Patrick's final gift, had been converted into a dual-purpose space. The front half was additional cafe seating with a small stage for performances. The back half was the Patricia and Patrick Reese Community Foundation. Free co-working space for entrepreneurs. Business mentorship programs. Art workshops for kids. Support groups for families dealing with medical crises. Everything funded through Crossroads profits and Elena's strategic investments. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday in January. 500 people RSVP'd. 700 showed up. Elena stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd that had gathered, some familiar faces, many new ones. She'd given hundreds of speeches in her life. At galas, at fundraisers, at corporate events where every word was carefully calculated for maximum impact. This one was different. This one was real. 3 months ago, I stood in a courtroom and fought for this cafe, Elena began. I thought I was fighting to save a business. A building. A dream that belonged to someone else. She smiled. I was wrong. I was fighting to save myself. To prove that I could be someone worth loving without the packaging. That I could build something meaningful instead of just inheriting it. That I could contribute to the world instead of just consuming it. Elena looked at Owen, who stood off to the side with Dorothy. I came to Crossroads as a cleaner, looking for an experience. I left as a partner, having found a purpose. And a family. And a love that changed everything. She gestured to the space around them. This foundation exists because two people, Patricia and Patrick Reese, believed that businesses should serve communities, not exploit them. That success is measured in lives improved, not just profits maximized. That the best legacy you can leave is teaching others to be brave enough to help each other. Elena's voice strengthened. So this space is for anyone who's drowning and needs help. Anyone who's fighting for a dream that seems impossible. Anyone who needs to be reminded that you're not alone, that community matters, that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The crowd erupted in applause. Owen stepped forward, taking the microphone. My parents would be overwhelmed by this. Probably embarrassed by all the attention. But mostly they'd be proud. Not of me, of all of you. He gestured to the crowd. This community showed up when we needed you. You came to our open mic night. You defended us on social media. You wore t-shirts to a courthouse and changed a judge's mind. You proved that community still matters in a world that tries to tell us it doesn't. Owen's eyes found Elena's. And you taught me that love is stronger than fear. That vulnerability is brave. That letting someone in doesn't make you weak, it makes you whole. He held out his hand. Elena took it, joining him at the podium. We're in this together now, Owen said. Building something that honors the past while creating the future. And we're inviting all of you to be part of it. Not as customers. As family. The applause was deafening. Later that night, after the crowd had dispersed and the space had been cleaned, Elena and Owen sat alone in the cafe. The string lights still hung from the ceiling, the same ones Elena had put up for that first open mic night. The ones that had witnessed their first kiss, their first fight, their first reconciliation. Can you believe this is our life now? Elena asked, her head on Owen's shoulder. Honestly? I keep expecting to wake up in the old cafe, drowning in debt, wondering how I'm going to survive another month. But you're not. No, I'm here. With you. Building something incredible. Owen pressed a kiss to her hair. Thank you. For what? For being terrible at cleaning. For staying when I was cruel. For fighting for this place when you had every reason to walk away. For loving me when I didn't know how to love myself. Elena lifted her head to look at him. You know what's funny? My parents sent me out into the world to prove I could survive without the ward name. They thought it would teach me humility, gratitude, perspective. Did it? It taught me something better. Elena's smile was soft. It taught me who I am when no one's watching. What I'm capable of when I'm scared. Who I want to be when I have the choice. She stood, pulling Owen up with her. Come with me. I have something to show you. Elena led him to the back office, where she pulled out a folder. I've been working on this for weeks. Didn't want to show you until it was finished. Owen opened the folder. Inside were architectural renderings, business plans, and financial projections. For 3 more Crossroads locations. You want to expand? Owen's voice was awed. I want to scale the model. Café in front, community foundation in back. Each location customized to its neighborhood's needs. Each one employing local people, supporting local artists, investing in local communities. Elena's eyes shone. We could change how people think about business. Prove that profit and purpose aren't mutually exclusive. Build an empire that actually makes the world better. Owen stared at the plans. Elena, this is massive. I know. And it's okay if you're not ready. If you want to keep Crossroads small and local and... Owen kissed her. Deep and long and full of promise. Let's build an empire, he said when they came up for air. Let's change the world. Together. Elena laughed, pure joy. Yeah. Owen's smile was brilliant. But first, I want to do something. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Elena's breath caught. I know we've only been together for 3 months, Owen said, his voice shaking slightly. I know there are people who'll say it's too fast, too soon, too impulsive. But my mom taught me that when you know, you know. And I know. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a small diamond that had clearly been chosen with care, not extravagance. Elena Ward, you are the bravest, smartest, most frustrating, most incredible person I've ever met. You saved my cafe, honored my parents, and taught me that love is worth fighting for even when it's terrifying. Owen's eyes glistened. Will you marry me? Will you build this ridiculous, beautiful, impossible life with me? Elena's hands covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Owen slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, and pulled her into his arms. They stood like that in the back office of Crossroads Café, holding each other, laughing and crying simultaneously. Two people who'd started as strangers, who'd become partners, who were now choosing forever. 6 months later, the wedding took place at Crossroads. Because of course it did. The cafe had been transformed with flowers and candles and the particular magic that happens when a space built on love hosts a ceremony celebrating it. 200 guests filled the space. Elena's parents, who'd come to grudging respect for their daughter's choices, Owen's extended family, Dorothy, who demanded the honor of officiating, and what felt like half the neighborhood. Elena walked down the aisle in a simple white dress that had cost a fraction of what her mother had wanted her to spend. She didn't care. She felt beautiful because Owen was looking at her like she'd hung the stars. Owen wore one of his father's suits, altered to fit. In his pocket, he carried a handkerchief that had been Patricia's, something borrowed, something that made his mother part of this moment. Dorothy's ceremony was perfect, funny and touching and so very them. Love, Dorothy said, her voice carrying to every corner of the cafe, is not about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose broken pieces fit with your broken pieces in a way that makes something whole. She looked at Elena and Owen. These two came together in chaos. In lies and truth and fear and courage. They didn't fall in love because it was easy. They fell in love because they made each other brave enough to be real. Dorothy smiled. And that, friends, is the kind of love that changes the world. The vows were simple. Owen promised to always listen, even when Elena's truths were hard to hear. To build with her instead of for her. To love all her contradictions, billionaire and cleaner, vulnerable and strong, private and public. Elena promised to always be honest, even when honesty was terrifying. To fight beside him instead of for him. To love all his complicated pieces, grief and joy, pride and humility, the man who'd learned to hope again. When Dorothy pronounced them married, the cafe erupted in cheers. The kiss was long and sweet and full of promise. And when they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, they did it as partners. Equals. Two people who'd saved each other. The reception lasted until 2 a.m. There were speeches. Dorothy made everyone cry laugh. Elena's father gave a surprisingly warm toast. Random customers shared stories about how Crossroads had changed their lives. There was dancing. Owen and Elena's first dance to a live jazz trio playing, at last, because some things are too perfect to resist. There was joy. Pure, uncomplicated, hard-earned joy. At midnight, Elena and Owen snuck away from their own reception, climbing to the roof of Crossroads where they'd installed a small terrace. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. We did it, Elena said, settling into Owen's arms. We actually did it. Built a successful business? That too. But I meant, we became real. We chose each other. We created a life that's actually ours instead of one that was planned for us. Owen turned her to face him, his hands settling on her waist. You know what I realized today? Tell me. My parents' story, meeting, falling in love, building the cafe together, I always thought it was this impossible romantic ideal. Something beautiful but unrepeatable. Just their story. He pressed his forehead to Elena's. But it's not just their story anymore. It's ours too. And we get to keep writing it. Every day. Every choice. Every moment we choose love over fear. Elena's eyes filled with tears, happy ones, the kind that overflow when your heart is too full to contain what you're feeling. I love you, Owen Reese. I love you, Elena Reese. Elena laughed. That's going to take some getting used to. You could have kept Ward. I could have, but I chose Reese. Because this, she gestured to the cafe below, to the life they'd built. This is the name that means something to me now. This is the legacy I want to be part of. Owen kissed her slowly, tenderly, with the particular sweetness of beginning something that will last. Below them, the cafe glowed warm and welcoming. Above them, stars witnessed promises that would be kept. And somewhere, Elena liked to believe, Patricia and Patrick smiled. 1 year later, the New York Times Sunday magazine ran a cover story. The Crossroads model, how one cafe is revolutionizing community-centered business. The article detailed the expansion. 4 Crossroads locations now, each one thriving, each one anchoring its neighborhood with business in front and foundation in back. It profiled the families who'd been helped, the single mother who'd gotten free business mentorship and now ran her own bakery, the artist who'd found community and gallery representation through Crossroads workshops, the medical resident whose family had received support during his father's cancer treatment. But the part that went viral was the final paragraph. When asked what advice they'd give to other entrepreneurs, Elena and Owen Reese spoke simultaneously, lead with love. It sounds simplistic, perhaps naive, but in practice, it means centering human dignity in every business decision. It means measuring success in lives improved, not just profits maximized. It means building something that matters instead of just something that makes money. 1 year ago, Elena Reese was a billionaire heiress pretending to be poor to prove her worth to her parents. Owen Reese was a cafe owner drowning in debt and grief. Today, they're partners, in business and in life, building an empire that proves capitalism and compassion aren't mutually exclusive. Perhaps that's the real crossroads we all face, the choice between what's profitable and what's meaningful. The Reeses suggest we can choose both. And they're building the proof, one cafe at a time. The article included a photo, Elena and Owen in the original Crossroads, arms around each other, smiling at something off camera. You could see the love between them. Clear as day. Present day. Elena Reese, 26 years old, CEO of Crossroads Community Enterprises, board member of the Charlotte Ward Memorial Foundation, stood in the original cafe at 5:45 a.m. on a Thursday. The space was quiet before opening, the espresso machine warming up, the morning light filtering through windows that had witnessed so much transformation. Her phone buzzed. A message from her father. Charles Ward, board meeting went well. Your Q4 presentation was exceptional. Your grandmother would be proud. I am too, though I don't say it enough. Elena smiled. Her relationship with her parents would never be simple. But it had become real. Honest. Built on mutual respect instead of obligation. Another message. This one from Owen. Oh, running late. Mom's grave visit took longer than expected. Start prep without me? Love you. Elena's heart squeezed. Owen visited his parents' graves every Thursday morning, bringing flowers and sharing updates about their growing empire. Elena, already started. Take your time. They deserve it. Love you more. She set down her phone and began the opening routine, the same one she'd learned a year and a half ago when she'd been a terrible cleaner pretending to be someone she wasn't. Except now she wasn't pretending. Now she was exactly who she was meant to be. The door chimed. Dorothy walked in carrying a box of pastries. Morning, honey. Brought cinnamon rolls from that new baker on 5th. You spoil us. Someone has to. You two work too hard. Dorothy settled at the counter, watching Elena work. You know what strikes me? What's that? A year and a half ago, you couldn't make coffee to save your life. Literally had Owen wondering if you'd ever held a cup before. Elena laughed. I was pretty terrible. Now look at you. Dorothy gestured at the perfect cappuccino Elena was crafting. Expert barista. Business owner. Wife to my favorite nephew by choice. You became exactly who you needed to be. I became who I always was, Elena corrected gently. I just finally had a reason to stop hiding. The door chimed again. Owen walked in, his hair windswept, his eyes carrying the particular softness they always held after visiting his parents. He moved straight to Elena, pulled her close, kissed her like they hadn't seen each other in days instead of hours. "Good visit?" Elena asked when they came up for air. "Yeah." Told them about the 5th location, the one in Mom's old neighborhood. "I think she would have loved that." "She definitely would have." Owen grabbed an apron, tying it on with practiced ease. "Ready to change the world today?" Elena laughed. "Every day." They worked side by side in comfortable silence, the rhythm they'd developed over months of partnership making words unnecessary. At 6:30, they unlocked the doors. The first customer was a young woman, maybe 22, wearing thrift store clothes, carrying the particular nervousness of someone about to ask for something difficult. "Hi," she said quietly. I saw online that you have community resources. I'm trying to start a business, but I don't know where to begin and I can't afford." "Come with me," Elena said gently, recognizing herself in this girl's fear and hope. "Let's talk about what you need." She led the young woman to the community foundation space, where volunteers were already setting up for the day's workshops. And as Elena listened to this stranger's dream, helping her map out strategies, connecting her with resources, showing her that support exists for people brave enough to ask, she felt Patricia's words echo in her memory. "Love multiplies when you give it away." That evening, Elena and Owen sat in their apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in the neighborhood they'd come to love, close enough to walk to Crossroads every morning. They'd looked at bigger places. Owen's success and Elena's wealth could have bought them a penthouse, a mansion, anything they wanted. But they'd chosen this instead. Home that felt real instead of impressive. 5 locations by the end of next year, Owen said, studying expansion plans. "That's ambitious." "We can handle it," Elena said confidently. "We have the model, the mission, and each other. Most importantly, each other." Owen set aside the plans, pulling Elena into his arms. "Do you ever regret it? Walking away from Ward International? You could have been CEO of a global empire." "I am CEO of an empire. Just one that measures success differently." Elena settled against his chest. "I have everything I want, Owen. Meaningful work. Real relationships. A life that's actually mine. And you. Always me. Always you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their neighborhood. "Hey, Elena?" Owen said softly. "Yeah. Thank you." "For what?" "For being terrible at cleaning. For staying when I was cruel. For seeing potential in a dying cafe and a drowning man. For choosing this life when you could have had anything." Elena turned to face him, cupping his face in her hands. "You gave me something money can't buy, Owen Reese. You gave me myself. The real version, not the performance. You made me brave enough to be honest. To be flawed. To be human." She kissed him softly. "So thank you. For seeing me. For loving me. For building this ridiculous, beautiful, impossible life with me." "Not impossible," Owen corrected. "Just improbable. There's a difference." "You're right." Elena smiled. "Improbable. But real. The best things always are." 5 years later, Crossroads Community Enterprises operated 23 locations across 6 states. Each one followed the same model: Café in front, community foundation in back. Each one employed local people, supported local artists, invested in local families. The business had been featured in Harvard Business Review as a case study in sustainable social entrepreneurship. Elena had been offered a position in the presidential administration's Small Business Council. She declined, preferring hands-on work to policy. Owen had been named one of Forbes' 30 under 35 social entrepreneurs to watch. But the achievement they were proudest of had nothing to do with accolades or recognition. It was the letters. Hundreds of them, from people whose lives had been changed by Crossroads. The single father who'd gotten job training and now supported his kids. The veteran who'd found community and purpose. The teenage artist who'd been given her first gallery show. Lives changed because 2 people had chosen love over fear. Purpose over profit. Connection over convenience. And on a Tuesday morning in October, Elena and Owen stood in the original Crossroads Café, the one where it all began, holding a secret between them. "Should we tell Dorothy first?" Owen asked, his hand on Elena's still flat stomach. "Definitely. She'll kill us if we tell anyone else before her." They found Dorothy at her usual table, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee that Owen had made exactly the way she liked it. "Dorothy," Elena said, sitting down across from her. "We have news." Dorothy looked up, her eyes sharpening with the intuition of someone who'd watched them grow from strangers to partners to family. "You're pregnant," she said immediately. Elena laughed. "How did you?" "Honey, I've known you for 5 years. You've been glowing for 2 weeks and Owen's been looking at you like you're made of glass." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. Patricia would be over the moon. "We're terrified," Owen admitted. "Of course you are. Parenting is terrifying. But you too," Dorothy reached across the table, squeezing both their hands. "You two know how to love well. How to build something meaningful. How to show up even when it's hard. You're going to be amazing parents." "We want to name her Patricia," Elena said softly. "If it's a girl, Patricia Charlotte. After Owen's mom and my grandmother." Dorothy openly wept. They would be so honored. So proud. "And if it's a boy," Owen added, "Patrick Charles." Covering all the bases, Dorothy laughed through tears. "Smart." They sat together in the cafe, 3 people who'd become family not through blood but through choice. Outside, the neighborhood bustled with morning activity. Inside, love multiplied. The way it always does when you give it away. But really, it's just the beginning. Because love stories don't end with happily ever after. They continue in every choice to show up, to be honest, to stay when leaving would be easier. They continue in businesses built on purpose instead of just profit. They continue in communities lifted up instead of exploited. They continue in children raised to believe that who they are is enough, that love is stronger than fear, that building something meaningful is worth more than inheriting something empty. Elena Ward came to Crossroads Café looking for an experience. She found a purpose. Owen Reese was drowning when Elena walked through his door. She taught him to breathe again. Together, they built an empire that proved capitalism could have a conscience. That wealth could be wielded wisely. That the best inheritance you can leave isn't money, it's the courage to love well. So here's my question for you, beautiful souls. What crossroads are you standing at right now? What choice are you too scared to make? What version of yourself are you hiding because you're afraid it's too much or not enough? Drop your answers in the comments. Let's build a community right here that supports each other the way Crossroads supported Elena and Owen. And if this story touched you, if it made you laugh or cry or believe in love again, please subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear that transformation is possible. That love wins. That you are enough, exactly as you are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until the next story, choose love, build purpose. Be brave. And remember, you're not alone at your crossroads. None of us are.